Hello, my ninjas. This guide will show you how to use the Flaming Heron, the Yoroka, the Raijin, the Hellfire, the Eight Cold Hells, and the Thunderous Hell Shadow Arts. The Shadow Art jutsus all read effectively the same, with when used, it inflicts their specific elemental damage and major key damage on your enemy. If the enemy's key is depleted, it will inflict major of their elemental damage instead. The fire reading for fire, water reading for water, and lightning reading for lightning, respectively. All of these serve an equal same purpose, so I will be coupling them all in the same video, with the differences being the jutsu cost for all the regular 3 being at a 1.5 and the enhanced versions being at a 2.5, the total amount per variable regardless of jutsu cost being at a 6 for the regular and 4 at max for the enhanced, and the status effects, of course, fire inflicting scorch, the water variants inflicting saturated, and the lightning variants inflicting electrocuted. All of these jutsu are on the slower side of the casting animations. While these can be cast when the player is out of key, due to how slow the casting animation is, this is not a recommended way to use these. The jutsu is launched when the player's head starts turning back towards the enemy. If that is interrupted, the jutsu will not launch. Despite their ability to hit multiple enemies, the singular regular jutsu are best used against individual targets, while the hell variants are better used against multiple targets. While these can inflict their corresponding elemental ailments and damage, these are primarily for the purposes of inflicting key damage and assassinations. This is not to be underestimated, as even the weaker variants deal apocalyptic damage. Outside of elemental affinity, the Flaming Heron manifests 3 floating fireballs that have about a medium tracking and will home in on an enemy but will dissipate at a certain range. So they are not effective at long range. Surprisingly, in my experience, as you just saw, these deal the most damage despite not being the enhanced version, unless enemies have specific resistances to fire-based damage. The Yoroka water spawns water pillars at the opponent's location so long as the player is able to lock onto their opponent. These travel from right to left, which can be useful against enemies that attempt to dodge left and right. The Raijin feathers spawns lightning strikes that travel forward towards enemies. If we go into camera mode, we are able to see the multiple lightning strikes. This can be useful against enemies that attempt to dodge backwards. The Hellfire spawns a fire blast directly at opponent's feet, which can be used similar to what I described in the bomb video, as it can be used to attack multiple enemies that are closely packed together. The 8 Cold Hells projects pillars of ice that form from the player that progressively expand outwards, that expand wider and taller in 3 sets. This can be useful against enemies that are roughly directly in front of the player. The Thunderous Hell spawns multiple lightning blasts that surround the player, which can be useful again if the player is surrounded. While these are general rules and not absolutes, the best time to use these would be to determine first, is the enemy low on ki or out of ki? If not, it might be more efficient and effective to use a different jutsu. Is the player attempting to hit three or more at the same time, or just one or two? If this is just one or two, I would recommend using the regular variants. The reason why I would still recommend using the regular variants is this can be canceled and the jutsus can be used after a counter where you can start off with one that travels with the flaming heron and use another one that spawns at the enemy's feet. However, if they are packed together nicely, like described, it is still possible to just simply use the enhanced variants. But considering that those have a much higher jutsu cost and are therefore not able to be readied as many and harder to recover from enhanced ninjutsu effect, it is much better to try and use the regular variants if at all possible. If there are multiples, it is better to use the enhanced variants. And then lastly, does the enemy have specific elemental weaknesses? If they do, it would be best to use those specific elemental versions rather than trying to use any random one. You have to understand each of these deal key damage. So even if the opponent isn't already key broken, using one after the other, especially in conjunction with soul cores and yokai abilities, will eventually help get the opponent to that key broken state so that they can receive the maximum damage from that. If these are the only jutsu the player has left on them or readied, and the player can't hide like in boss battles, there is a preferred order to maximize these, and we can see this in how Kato Danzo puts these in order. Now I'm going to kind of talk through this because I don't want the enemy to recover as I'm trying to explain this, but first we're going to start off with lightning. This is to inflict the electrified effect to reduce enemy speed, and this can be doubled up if the player has sloth on ninjutsu, and then followed up by water, as this will inflict saturated, which increases the damage that enemies take, and also deals more key damage to get that key break if they aren't already yet. With with the combination with lightning, this also inflicts the confusion status, which makes enemies take even more damage and slows, if not outright completely halts their key regeneration, which further helps get the key break. And then fire, this is obviously augmented as it does the most damage, and it's augmented by the confusion and saturated statuses. With all the fire shadow art jutsus, they all have individual hits. Each of these obviously dealing key damage that can help get that key break. Now, when using these, it is recommended and you should combine these with your yokai sokors so you can get that key break as well. This order is based on enemies that do not have specific resistances or weaknesses towards certain elements. If they do, feel free to exclusively use a particular element or skip one as appropriate. What I like to do is I like to sneak into dark realms Kill the yokais emitting the dark realm. As you can see, yokai enemies stay in a key broken state when the yokai that is emitting the dark realm is killed. Well, most yokai, I can use this opportunity to execute yokai enemies and pick them off one by one without the worry of having to rush. Against stronger yokai that might survive multiple shadow arts, I typically like to, instead of using the enhanced versions, as I mentioned, the Flaming Heron is still the actual strongest and most useful against an individual enemy. And I will combine two of them against a single enemy by leading with the Flaming Heron, canceling out of it, and then using another to land at the same exact time.